The first letter appeared on the third night after humanity officially joined the Galactic Concord. I remember the date because the station clocks were still glitching from the integration update, blinking between Terran Standard and Concord's spiral time, and because I hadn't slept much since arriving. Embassy Station Irene was massive, an artificial moon hanging over the pale blue gas giant Viral, but despite the endless corridors and diplomatic bustle, my quarters felt too quiet, too empty. I was just a logistics officer. Not a hero. Not a diplomat. Certainly not someone who expected to matter. When I opened my door that night, there was no courier drone, no attendant, no official seal. Just a single envelope resting on the floor like it had been carefully placed by hand. It was made of pressed vellum, not synth paper. Real fibers. The kind used by old civilizations that valued permanence. No sender. No stamp. Just my name, written in careful, uneven script. Elias Ward. I stood there longer than I should have, scanning the empty hallway. The station lights hummed softly. No footsteps. No movement on the security overlay in my retinal display. Finally, I picked it up. Inside was a single folded page. Human Elias. I apologize for the intrusion. I do not know the proper way to speak to you, so I have chosen the improper one. Please forgive me. A friend. That was all. No threat. No request. No explanation. I slept badly that night, turning the letter over and over in my thoughts. Embassy Station had layers of security so thick it made paranoia feel redundant. Whoever wrote this had bypassed all of it, or belonged somewhere above it. The next night there was another letter. This time I was waiting. I had told no one. Not my supervisor. Not security. Curiosity has always been my worst trait. The envelope was different. Pale blue this time, faintly iridescent, like it reflected emotions more than light. Inside. I worried you might be angry. Humans value boundaries. I have read this. I will stop if you wish. I only wanted to say that your speech during the accession ceremony was comforting. You spoke of fear as something to be faced, not erased. That was kind. I laughed softly despite myself. My speech had been a last-minute filler segment, something the committee asked me to read because I was human and available. I talked about standing on the edge of deep water, about how fear didn't mean weakness. I hadn't thought anyone important was listening. Apparently, someone was. On the third night, the letter came earlier. On the fourth, earlier still. By the sixth night, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor when I heard the softest sound, fabric brushing metal. I looked up. The hallway was empty again. But the letter was warm. This one was longer. The handwriting trembled in places. I am not brave. Among my people, that is shameful. We are taught to be radiant, unyielding, precise. I am none of these things. But when you spoke, you did not pretend to be fearless. You admitted you were afraid, and stood anyway. I read that humans call this courage.
I think I understand now.
I leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't random. This wasn't a prank. Whoever was writing these letters wasn't just watching me. They understood me. On the eighth night, I wrote back. I didn't know where to leave the reply. Eventually, I placed it just outside my door and went back inside, heart pounding like I'd done something reckless. To a friend, you don't need to apologize for writing. I'm glad you did. If being brave means standing while afraid, then you might be braver than you think. Elias. The reply came the very next night.
You wrote back.
I had hoped. I did not expect. Thank you. From then on, the letters became a ritual. Every night, without fail. She wrote about life inside the Concorde's upper echelons. About halls made of living crystal. about ceremonies where every gesture was measured and judged, about being watched constantly, weighed and evaluated. She never named herself, but she wrote about isolation the way only royalty ever could. One night, she confessed something that made my breath catch. I am not permitted to speak freely. Words spoken aloud can be recorded, analyzed, used. Written words, however, are considered inefficient, unimportant. That is why I chose this way. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just someone important. This was someone protected and lonely enough to risk everything just to talk to a human logistics officer. On the 13th night, the letter was stained at the corner, as if something had touched it. They say I will be presented soon. A formal unveiling. I am to smile. I am to shine. I am terrified. I didn't hesitate this time. You don't owe anyone perfection. I wrote. You're allowed to be afraid. And you're allowed to choose who you are. The response came with a pressed flower I didn't recognize, delicate and silver-veined. I wish humans had joined the Concorde sooner. She wrote. You are inconvenient. In the best way. The unveiling happened 3 nights later. Every screen on Embassy Station lit up with the broadcast. The announcer's voice trembled with reverence as the image resolved. The Princess of Aurelian stepped forward. She was luminous, tall, willowy, skin like moonlit pearl, eyes the deep violet of starlit oceans. Her crown was a lattice of light that hovered just above her brow. She smiled, and for just a fraction of a second, so small most would miss it, her gaze flicked to the camera assigned to the human delegation.
To me.
That night, there was no letter. Instead, my door chimed. When I opened it, she stood there in a simple cloak, crown dimmed, guards held back by a single raised hand. Up close, she looked younger.
Softer.
More frightened. I am sorry, she said quietly. I did not know how else to meet you. I swallowed. You're the one who's been writing. She nodded, hands clasped tightly in front of her. I am Princess Lyrian of Aurelian, she said. And I am very bad at being alone. We talked until the station lights shifted to dawn cycle. She told me about expectations, about a life lived behind glass. I told her about Earth, about rainstorms and quiet nights, and how humans survived by leaning on one another. I am not supposed to choose, she said softly. My path is decided. I met her eyes. Then maybe you don't choose your path. Maybe you choose your people. She considered that for a long time. The next day, the Concorde reeled. Princess Lyrian announced the Aurelian Initiative, an unprecedented cultural exchange program led jointly by Aurelian and humanity. She cited human resilience, human emotional adaptability, human courage in uncertainty. She requested a human liaison. My name echoed through the chamber. That night, the final letter appeared at my door. I am still shy. I am still afraid. But I am no longer silent. Thank you for answering the door. The letters stopped after that. She didn't need them anymore. She had found her voice. And somehow, against all odds, humanity had once again done what it did best. Not by conquering stars, but by listening quietly until someone brave enough finally knocked. That's how the galaxy learned a dangerous truth. Never underestimate the power of a human who opens the door, or the princess who dared to write first. The first letter appeared on the 3rd night after humanity officially joined the Galactic Concorde. I remember the timing clearly because Embassy Station Irene still hadn't stabilized its artificial gravity cycles. Every few hours the floor felt subtly wrong, like the universe was leaning. Most humans blamed the station. I blamed the feeling that I didn't belong. I was not an ambassador. I wasn't a soldier or a scientist. I was a logistical coordinator, paperwork, schedules, cargo permissions. My job was to make sure nothing important ever noticed me. So when I opened my quarters door and found an envelope resting on the polished alloy floor, my first thought was that it was a mistake. It wasn't marked with a department seal. It wasn't tagged for delivery. It was old-fashioned, made of pressed fiber rather than synth paper, and addressed by hand. Elias Ward. My name looked hesitant, like whoever wrote it had paused between letters. I checked the corridor. Empty. Security fields hummed faintly, and my implant showed no registered movement for the last 60 seconds. Whatever had delivered it hadn't used any official system. Inside was a single sheet, folded twice. Human Elias. I apologize for writing to you without permission. I do not know the rules for this. Please forgive me if this is improper. A friend. No request. No threat. No explanation. I should have reported it. Instead, I sat on my bunk for a long time, staring at the careful curves of the handwriting. There was something painfully deliberate about it, as if every word had been chosen with fear. The next night, there was another letter. This time I was waiting. It arrived silently, sometime between the dimming of the station lights and the artificial dawn cycle. Again, no record of movement. Again, no sender. I worried you would be angry. Humans value personal space. I have studied this. If you wish me to stop, I will. I only wanted to say that your words during the accession ceremony stayed with me. You spoke of fear as something that does not invalidate courage. That was kind. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That speech had been a last-minute assignment. A human presence requirement. I talked about uncertainty, about standing in a hostile universe and choosing cooperation anyway. I hadn't imagined anyone powerful listening. By the fifth night, the letters had become routine. She wrote about observation halls and endless etiquette training, about how every movement of her species' leadership was measured and evaluated, about the weight of expectation pressing down until silence felt safer than honesty. She never named herself, but she wrote like someone trapped inside a golden cage. On the seventh night, I wrote back. I placed my reply outside my door, feeling ridiculous and reckless all at once. You don't have to apologize for speaking. I wrote. If fear disqualified courage, humanity wouldn't exist. I'm glad you wrote to me, Elias. The response came the very next night. You answered. I hoped you might. I did not expect you would. Thank you. From then on, the letters deepened. She wrote about loneliness, about being surrounded by advisors, yet never truly heard. She confessed she was considered defective among her people, too quiet, too uncertain, too emotional. I am meant to be radiant, she wrote one night. I am meant to inspire certainty. But I feel everything too sharply. I recognized that feeling instantly. Humans had built entire cultures around learning to live with it. One night, her handwriting wavered noticeably. I am not permitted to speak freely aloud, she wrote. Words spoken can be recorded, analyzed, preserved. Written words are considered inefficient. That is why I chose letters. They think no one important would bother. That was when the truth finally clicked into place. This wasn't just a lonely official. This was someone protected by layers of power. On the 12th night, the letters smelled faintly of something floral and unfamiliar. They say I will be revealed soon, she wrote. A formal unveiling before the Concorde. I am to smile and embody certainty. I am terrified. I didn't wait this time. You don't owe the galaxy perfection. I wrote back. Fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. And honesty changes things. The response included a pressed alien flower, silvery and delicate. You make dangerous arguments, she wrote. I find that I like them. The unveiling happened 3 nights later. Every display across Embassy Station lit up as the Aurelian delegation entered the Concorde Hall. The announcer spoke in hushed tones as the figure at the center stepped forward. Princess Lyrian of Aurelian. She was luminous, tall and elegant, her skin catching the light like polished pearl. A crown of living energy hovered above her head, pulsing gently in time with her breath. She smiled, and for a heartbeat, just one, her eyes flicked toward the human delegation feed.
Toward me.
That night, there was no letter. Instead, my door chimed softly. When I opened it, she stood there in a simple cloak, crown dimmed, guards held back by a single raised hand. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I did not know how else to meet you." Her voice trembled despite her composure. "I'm Elias," I said unnecessarily. She smiled faintly. "I know." We talked until the station cycled to artificial dawn. She spoke of a life lived under constant scrutiny, of expectations so rigid they left no room to breathe. I told her about Earth, about storms and laughter, and how humans survived not by being fearless, but by supporting one another when fear came. "I am not meant to choose," she said softly. "My future is planned." "Then don't choose the future," I said. "Choose who you stand with." She considered that for a long time. The Concorde announcement came 2 days later. Princess Lyrian proposed the Aurelian Human Cultural Accord, an unprecedented exchange focused on emotional intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. She cited humanity's willingness to admit fear without surrendering to it. She requested a human liaison. My name echoed through the chamber. The backlash was immediate. Several species objected. Aurelian traditionalists protested. Analysts called it reckless. Princess Lyrian stood firm. "I was raised to be flawless," she said before the Concorde. "But perfection does not create understanding. Humanity does." That night, the final letter appeared at my door.
I am still shy.
I am still afraid, but I am no longer silent. Thank you for opening the door. The letters stopped after that. She no longer needed them. She had found her voice. In the months that followed, humanity's influence spread, not through weapons or dominance, but through something far more unsettling to the galaxy: honest vulnerability. Other leaders began requesting human advisors. Emotional transparency became a subject of study. Quiet revolutions unfolded behind closed doors. And sometimes, late at night, when the station corridors are still and the universe feels vast and uncertain, I think about that first letter. How close I came to ignoring it. That's the thing the galaxy learned too late. Never underestimate a human who answers a knock, or a shy princess brave enough to write first.